The Michigan Military and Veterans Hall of Honor is producing these videos to talk about inductees to the Hall of Honor. I am Jim Fausone, one of the board members. We are recording these short videos and hoping that you find the information interesting enough that you dig a little deeper and read about the detailed stories that we have on these inductees to the Michigan Military and Veterans Hall of Honor. Today, we're going to talk with former board member Paul Ryan, vice chair of the board, and Paul Ryan, Captain Paul Ryan of the Navy. I'm going to ask you to talk about Herman Keizer, who was put into the Michigan Military and Veteran Hall of Honor in 2022 on the veteran side of things, who again is a very inspirational Michigander that more people ought to know about. Tell us how you know about Herm Keizer.
Yeah, absolutely, Jim. I met Herm probably 15 years ago or so. There is an organization over here in Grand Rapids called the Army and Navy Club of Grand Rapids that happens to be the West Michigan the name of the West Michigan chapter for the Military Officers Association of the United States. It's a veteran service organization that has about 350,000 members nationwide. Herm was a long-term member of the organization, as I have been, and Herm also served as president of the club, president of the chapter, as had I. So I knew him mainly from that. We collaborated on a number of different projects, both as members of the Army Navy Club of Grand Rapids, but also through some other endeavors. Herm was very involved with the Military Order of the Purple Heart as a Purple Heart recipient himself, and was also a national chaplain for the national organization for the Purple Heart. Really wonderful individual, very, very accomplished as a military chaplain, as well as a civilian minister after he took off his uniform for the final time.
Well, and it's interesting because he attended what was then called Kelvin College over in Grand Rapids. When he got drafted, he became a chaplain assistant on his way to becoming a chaplain, and really spent his military career serving in that capacity, serving the souls of members of the armed forces at a very high level. I mean, this was a guy who obviously not only had the right spirit, but all those other things. Tell us what you think, or how you think the military shaped his life.
Oh yeah, with no question in this case, Jim, that Herm's life mission and career trajectory was profoundly shaped by his military experiences. He was a chaplain to a number of different Army units in country in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. He was injured twice in Vietnam. Once when he fell out of a helicopter. He took a 150-foot fall. How do you live through that?
By the grace of God.
By the grace of God. This was a man of the cloth, and God was looking out for him. He was also wounded in a rocket attack on his fire support base. So, he saw firsthand what combat could do to soldiers engaged in it. He received the Soldier's Medal, which is a military version of a life-saving medal, when he encountered an intoxicated soldier who was basically out of his head on alcohol and had a loaded weapon pointing it at some of his fellow soldiers. Herm was able to talk him down, so to speak, was able to gently and peacefully disarm him and diffuse the entire situation. These and certainly other experiences that Herm had during Vietnam gave him an understanding of the importance of learning as much as he could about post-traumatic stress. Personally, I don't use the term post-traumatic stress disorder I prefer post-traumatic stress as an indication of a more natural human reaction to these extreme events. Herm also was a pioneering, a thought leader in a related concept called moral injury in war. He spent 34 years in the Army, retired in 1998 as a full colonel, but was almost immediately recalled to active duty by the Secretary of the Army to serve as an advisor to a program that was being managed by the State Department. He finally retired from that in, I think it was 2008. He went immediately in a civilian career, to leadership positions in the Reformed Church of America here in Grand Rapids. Was a frequent lecturer and thought leader. He has contributed to books. He has been a panelist on a number of different commissions and programs. Grand Valley State University here has sponsored for a number of years an event called the Hidden Wounds of War Conference. And Herm was very heavily engaged in that effort. I look at Herm as not just as a pastoral minister, but a religious leader and an educator. As you alluded to earlier, at the highest levels. He was one of the senior chaplains, or the senior chaplain for NATO at one time while he was still in uniform.
Yeah, you really see this parallel course on his military career and his theological underpinnings and career going the same. You mentioned he was called back by the Secretary of the Army. He served at one point as the ambassador at large for international religious freedom for the State Department. He was an early leader in this whole concept of moral injury, and helped co-found something called the Soul, SOUL, Repair Center, dedicated to educating and researching moral injury and recovery for military veterans. This was sort of groundbreaking work at that time, and people should go back and reflect on it and find it pretty inspiring, it seems to me.
Oh, without question. The Army, especially the Army and the Marine Corps were doing the heavy lifting, of course, in Iraq and Afghanistan in the early 2000s. It was people like Herm who led the way in enhancing the understanding of post-traumatic stress and moral injury, and what to do about it, how to treat it, how to deal with it. He was a pioneer in that effort, and he dedicated his life to it from the time he raised his hand as a chaplain's assistant until literally the day he died. He dedicated his entire life to improving people's lives in that area.
Well, I think, again, it's so important to learn more about these men and women who have been inducted into the Michigan Military and Veterans Hall of Honor. And I think this is a good example of everybody should want to read a little more and learn a little more about Herman Keizer Jr., what his whole life was dedicated to. So we appreciate your insights on this, Paul.
Sure.